G'day, folks. It is the coach. Welcome to Talking Stormcast Eternal. Don't touch your dial. It is not Groundhog Day. We are talking Stormcast again. Literally, what a week since I last spoke to No. We had a good discussion. We were talking from a very competitive level with an ITC player. And I have someone of equal status who's going to have potentially a different perspective, but also maybe some similarities, I guess. I'm here with Measured Gaming's Joel McGrath. You've been on the channel. I think this is the first time you've been here as a Stormcast fan. You are normally talking to me about Beasts of Chaos, and this man, just for clarity, does really well with Beasts of Chaos. So if he can do well with Beasts of Chaos, and I know you're not picking this up for the first time, you have been a Sigmarite fan since like way back, and
since they first came out,
it's not like Joel has just jumped onto this from a Beast of Chaos going, right, cool, I'm sick of the herd, I'm going to be a Stormcast player. You have been running them for a while now. Ever since I've known you, you've always kind of like, it's been your holiday spot with Beast of Chaos as well between those two. But I guess we're going to talk Stormcast.
We are, really keen to be back here, mate, so thanks for having me on, and keen to talk about, well, my favourite army, I suppose. Yeah, as you were saying, it's about 50-50 between them and Bok. So yeah, I like to dabble in a few.
Is great. They're a good army, and you got some list science, and it takes a skilled pilot to handle Beasts of Chaos. But we've obviously got the new book, right? So if people are joining in for the first time, we have the new Stormcast Eternals book. We've had the FAQ. Hot off the press, 24 hours ago, we had Storm Drake changes. We'll come to that. I want to get your opinions on that, but hold it for now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do a couple of videos, folks, on Stormcast Eternals because it is a massive book. It is probably the thickest book out there in the mortal realms, not even considering your allied pool, right? You've got like almost 100 war scrolls. So I want to get some different thoughts, some interesting ideas around Signs of the Storm, on Storm Keeps, on, Hallowed Knights, Hammers of Sigmar. Get a whole variance to go, right, well, if I don't want to run that Mortal Wound Protection Storm Keep, then, it's not the only way to build, or at least my perspective is, there's more than one way to build. But I think a lot of Hammers is getting a lot of focus. But before we get into that, Joel, tell people who you are and why you got into the Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Joel McGrath. I'm the overlord of Measured Gaming. We've got our own YouTube channel and podcast. Not suitable for work.
I was going to say not suitable for work. Great battle reports, really good for me. I think you were one of the first to start looking at battle reports from a very competitive point of view, because you do have a lot of players who have a very masters or aspiring masters player. So you always have a very technical lens, but also a lot of a shit talking kind of lens. So definitely don't put it on at work or around the kids.
We like to have a bit of fun and like play hard, as well. So it's a good mix. Our battle reports are nothing like Season of War. It's shaky hand cam, pretty sort of garbage content, but some people enjoy it. So it's not for everyone, but for those that do watch and subscribe and all that. So thank you. But
it's good fun. It's good fun, and you're here on your own merits, right? You are a top level Australian player. You do well competitively across the scene. You're always up in the top in the rankings. So I thought, I really wanted to get your competitive perspective, and anything we discuss here, folks, as always, it's not to say that a particular unit is rubbish. If we don't talk about evocators and sequitors, it's not saying that you shouldn't run them. You go run the army. But if you're thinking about going to a tournament and you want to do well, you want to go 3 wins, 4 wins, maybe even win the whole event with 5 wins. This is really why I want to kind of pick Joel's brain to understand how he's looking at it from a very competitive perspective.
Well, with the book being so large, there's so many options and there's so much versatility and tools and just you name it, it's got it, And so it attracts a lot of different play styles. It can adapt to a meta that changes all the time, So, I think it's a really good book to play competitively, and you get to learn the game well with them as well. So, yeah.
So maybe let's start off with the hobby side, right? Like what got you into Stormcast Eternals, and then we'll get into the weeds and understand like what's changed and how are you thinking about it competitively, because you and I have both been here from the start. We've seen the Stormcast Eternals through every single evolution. You've had 3 generations of models. We've had so many different little tricks from the Warrior Brotherhood to was it the Gav Bomb to we've had so many different little names. I think it'll be good to kind of reset to go, where are you at in 3rd edition? But what got you into Stormcast?
Yeah, so I never played fantasy. So Age of Sigmar was my first dabble into a fantasy setting war game, and they were the army that I liked in the starter box. So picked them up and split the corn off with one of my mates here, and it just sort of grew into 30 odd thousand points that I've got now. I just love the aesthetic. I love the lore behind them. I love the the Lightning Men sort of style. So yeah, it's just awesome. Sigmar's a chat as well. So Hello Knights, man. Gardas he's my favorite character of all time in Black Library. I just love it. Love the silver, only the faithful.
Yeah, no, I dig it. I've actually got a Galmaraz sitting up here, a full real life Galmaraz. Although,
Nice.
as people would know, I'm an Empire man. I'm at the humans. I'm about the cities of Sigmar. But I personally, if this is the first time you've heard me, you didn't catch the last show, and I highly recommend you check out the other discussions on Stormcast. I've been really drawn to the new armor. I was never a big fan of the old style, and I know, Joel, you were a fan, and I'm not going to rubbish it. It just wasn't for me. And I really like the new style. So for me, the aesthetics has finally caught me. I think there's some really interesting things as well. I think the other big one as well is I've never been a big fan of helmets. I didn't like the original Stormcast where they were all helmets, right? I love seeing the faces because, in the lore, at least the lore that I knew, these are reforged heroes of the old world and the new world, right? The Age of Sigmar as well as the world that was. So I always wanted to know, like, who was behind the helmet? Who is this hero and what did they do and what do they look like and who were the champions? And I wonder, under their helmets, is there a goblin? Is there an orc? Is there a dwarden? Surely they get reforged. It's not just humans, but for me, the newer style and, even things like the evocators and their cloaks and things have kind of drew me to Stormcast. And but it's not that me. That's just like for me, I'm now actually excited. I've been reading the lore and I've been, trying to understand chambers and, the different brotherhoods and the structures and, who did what and where and, the impacts of the Realm Gate Wars and.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the Gates of Azir, the first sort of little novella that came out with the original starter box for AOS. And at the end of that, Vandus takes off his helmet and, he's got the chiseled jaw and he's chatting to the humans who they've sort of inadvertently saved. And, there was a good sort of connection there from the get-go. So that's for some reason, that's always just stuck in my mind of who they are,
See, it's ironic because what's stuck in my mind is I don't know if you remember the short stories before the Soul Wars. We had that
Malign Portents,
Malign Portents had a whole bunch of stories, and I'll never forget the Stormcast story where it was like a dad and his son living in a little house, right? And they're sick. They're sick, right? They're probably like Farmer Joe, trying to do their best in a struggling world. And I think from memory, this story was the Stormcast were approaching the house and they're probably like, yay, we're dying, we're sick. The Stormcast are going to save us. And actually, the Stormcast go out and kill the family. And because I think they had Nurgle's rot or something. And I'm like, Stormcast are jerks. And then I read another story about Stormcast and like the Cities of Sigmar. I think it was like in the Cities of Secrets book. And like they look down thinking like, oh, the Stormcast think they're all the heroes. Like, we're the ones manning the walls and we're the Free Guild Guard doing all the hard work. And I think for me, I'm like, you stick to Stormcast.
Funnily enough, both of those stories that you mentioned feature Knights Excelsior, which we're going to be talking about later in my list. But with that Maligned Portents short story, if you ask anyone who read them at the time, which is the one that sticks out the most, it's definitely that. It really brought a different take to Stormcast.
Because they're not
having that.
They were the good guys, right? Like people were like, yeah, Stormcast are the goodies. They save the world. They come in with their lightning, and then you kind of saw that other side is that Order, and this has been around since the start. Order isn't good. Order is order. Order isn't good, and it's that grey where it's like, well, they would do anything to protect the Order, even if it meant killing a father and son who had Nurgle's rot.
Yeah, it's all about perspective, isn't it? Like, I'm sure Archaon and his followers think they're the good side. So
it's all about perspective. But hey, look, I am a free guild warrior aspiring to be a Stormcast. You obviously got into the stories. I really like the models. We've kind of acknowledged that. I want to talk about this new book, man. And we've had it for a couple of months now, and we've had the FAQ, and you've had some time to play with it. What's your take? How have you found it over the editions, or how have you just generally found the third book?
It's awesome. It's the best it's been. I feel like the previous books that came out were sort of lacking. Maybe not the first one, because that was a grey sort of area in the game and it didn't really have an identity yet, I suppose. And I feel like in the last book, or last two actually, it's just the last one. Lost a lot of all the cool, unique stuff. And like this one's obviously worse again, but at least the units feel like how they're sort of meant to, or how they sound in the lore. So, yeah, I'm loving this book. Loving all the different units, and yeah, I just love playing this army. I think I've had probably about 10 games because we're just coming out of lockdown as well. But still yet to lose or have a close game with them. And I've been playing different lists every time, so they're very strong.
And by the way, I want to make a formal apology, folks who listened to the last video. I want to make this is, I think, the first time I've ever apologized on the channel. I want to apologize to the vindicators of the AOS community. You are not the Vindictors. I kept saying Vindicators. I kept adding an A in there. And like, you guys, like, why do you have so many war scrolls? Apologies, Vindictors. If you heard me in the last show, I was talking about Vindictors, not Vindicators. Move along.
Yeah, no, we're not dropping pie plates on people in 40k, are we? So
I really like the book. It's not about me. I really like it. I think there's a lot of good options. You have a lot of new variety of models. It's not just about lightning strikes down and then kind of alphaing. You've got, I think there's always been a criticism that Stormcast is slow. Once it was on the table through Signs of the Storm, it was always a slow kind of army. Yes, you had your Vanguard, the palette, like the Raptors and things like that, and they were kind of fast. And you kind of relied on things like Gav Bombs or like the Lord Relictor to teleport you around the board. But I'm really happy to see options that aren't just about Signs of the Storm. You can put down a chariot and have some movement. You've got some really good cavalry options. You've got the Dracolines. You've got so many good options now that, however somebody wants to build, whether it's shooting, combat, on the table, Storm Keep, Drop from the Sky, Hero Hammer, there's something for everyone.
Yeah, and what you'll find as well is, even though translocation got nerfed, but with the Scions, when you drop your units down, there's generally more reliability of getting that charge, like with rerolls. If you're flying, and you got the Tempest Lords reroll the dice. Annihilators reroll their charge rolls, and dropping down 7 inches with Thunderstrike units with the Lord Imperator. There's a lot of little combos in there which you can do to make that strategy more reliable. So.
And actually, we're going to go through one of Joel's lists in a minute, but actually Joel inadvertently made me realize a change that I didn't actually notice initially on my preview. And by selecting the model, look, I was doing some research today. I'm like, why has he got this unit in? And I'm talking about the Prosecutors again. When I saw the Prosecutors, I'm like, why has he got Prosecutors? Because my experience at the time were I ran a lot of Prosecutors in my Cities of Sigmar Order army in first. And the models drove me insane. The really long wings, they would fall over all the time. And I'm like, why has he brought them back in his list? And the coherency changed. I'm like, I wonder if this is why he's brought them back.
Yep.
Because Because obviously good 3d6 charge, but
yeah,
we're kind of like ruining Christmas here. We're kind of spoiling the list a little bit.
that's okay. We can talk prosecutors for a minute. I think they're for the points that you pay for them, so either 110 or 115 with the javelins. They're probably one of the best units point for point in the book for the specific role that you need them to do, right? So essentially is what they do is they just soak up and unleash hell with a very reliable 3d6 charge 9 inches away. And yeah, sometimes they live, but who cares? It doesn't matter because it means that you can just get your heavy hitters like Annihilators with Grand Hammers or the Celestine Prime or Fulminators or whatever into combat without taking damage on the way in. And yeah, that's a 110 point investment, which I'm going to happily spend every time.
Yeah, and the coherency, I didn't notice until today that they actually have a 3-inch coherency, the same as the Stormdrake Guard, which means that, you don't have to, like, it just means that you can do some cool things with pinning. You obviously have a lot more versatility with how you move them around the board. I really like that.
I reckon anyone who played Prosecutors in AOS 2 would be lying to themselves if they ever said that they were always in an inch coherency when they were playing. I
tried my hardest. I wanted to like break their wings, or you tilt them sideways so they were like, crab crawling up the board, because the wings were just a nightmare. Like, I hated them.
Yeah, having that 3-inch just makes it great. And like, if you're not versing a shooting army, they're a good screen as well. So they take up a lot of board space. Even if you just want to zone out someone else's ambushing or deep striking, it's 110 points, man. You can't go wrong.
And as AT said as well, you can set them up outside of 9 inches to avoid redeploy, because normally, like a 9-inch charge is, a 25% success rate. But when you start adding in the 3d6 charge, all of a sudden, actually, it's not that risky of a charge. And, you can do some pretty cool things.
And what's the average on a 3d6? It's 10 or 11, isn't it? So it's very reliable.
I think it works out to be about 50% a 3d6. Don't maths hammer me, folks, but I'm pretty sure from memory, 3d6 a 9-inch charge is about 50 odds, somewhere between 50 and 60 or 50 and like somewhere that space.
Yep.
So, overall, you're liking the book. I really like the fact that you're not landlocked to your artifacts, your command traits. And have you found that has changed the way you've looked at your lists? Because often you would take the best allegiance ability with the least amount of attacks. Has that changed the way you've thought about the book?
Yeah, it has, because as you're saying, you're not locked. So all you're doing is just adding another layer of synergy or buffs to your army, and it sort of pushes you to theme it a little bit. So again, Tempest Lords with the flying units, re-rolling a dice, really great for the Celestine Prime or the new Dragons or Prosecutors, you name it. You got Pallid Knights, it sort of, you want to be taking Stormkeep with Redeemers and, fighting on a 4+ when you die and then exploding and all that stuff. Hammers of Sigmar is a great all-rounder. I think if you didn't have a particular one that you wanted, the 6-up ward near objectives, which is very generous. It's 12 inches from an objective? Yeah, it's basically the whole table. That's a really good one. And then, you can unlock different battle line choices. So Knights Excelsior, you unlock Paladins, and it just opens up a lot of different styles of armies, and it's quite diverse, I think. And none of them are really bad, except for maybe what was the good one? Anvils, yeah.
Anvils. I was gonna say, like, Anvils was the hot stuff in 2nd edition, and it was like shoot cast with Anvils, shoot in the hero phase, shoot in the shooting phase. Long strikes would make you cry. And now it feels like that Anvils are now at the bottom, and you're starting to see, as you said, many of the other different storm hosts step up. And because you're not landlocked to some of those not prayers, but your artifacts, your command traits, your allegiance stuff, I think it started to make some really interesting lists. But it seems like a lot of people are just sitting in hammers. A lot of the top lists I'm seeing is very hammer focused. Why do you think that? And do you agree that hammers? Because I guess if I'm a Stormcast player and I'm watching, the top performing lists, I'm hearing, the talking heads like me, and they're all saying, hammers, hammers, hammers. I'm probably maybe ignoring some of the other parts of the book. Do you think, I guess as a two-parter, is hammers the only way to go? And I guess, like how would you think about the other Storm hosts, from a competitive to a not so competitive stance?
Yeah. So no, I think there's a lot of different options other than hammers. I think why hammers are so popular at the moment is making the fulminators battle line. So yeah, realistically, you're starting a 2,000 point list, 300 and whatever points down because 3 times 5 libs, right? So those fulminator units that you're buying are actually got a pretty good discount on them because it's not taking all the liberators. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of good ones. So I'm a big fan of Excelsior, Hallowed Knights, mainly of the two, I think. Even Celestial Vindicators with like a Karazhai build, if you don't want to have to take extra Relictors and stuff, just to get the most out of him with the exploding sixes on the charge. Yeah, sorry, what was the second question? You wanted me to rank them, did you?
No, I don't need you to rank them. I guess, I wanted to more think about, was it 8 of them? Are they all competitive? Is it just the Hammers of Sigmar? Is it, there's a batch of 4 or 5 that you would consider for a tournament, given obviously the list might influence that a little bit?
I think mainly the meta is going to influence the most popular and competitive choice, right? So if we start to go to hordes in the next GHB, then you'd think that Hallowed Knights with Gardas and a whole heap of Redeemers in Stormkeep is going to probably be the best bet, just for all the extra counting as models, or counting as 3. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't like to lock myself into one specific one. I feel like
let's talk about the current meta then, Joel. Let's talk about the current meta. So your current meta, depending on where you are, obviously it'll vary, but you have I guess the safe stacking, especially Hero Hammer, Archaon, Nagash, Morathi, Hero Hammers, Blood Knights, everyone on a 2-up, 5-up, feel no pain, Mega Gargants for days. You've got that kind of style. You've got some pretty heavy shooting armies at the moment, whether it's your Daughters of Cain, your Lumineth, even your Cruel Boys. They're definitely like tearing up the meta right now. A bit of magical supremacy from Zench, Seraphon, Lumineth. So that's kind of like our meta right now, like kind of where we sit.
Yep. So to fight the big bads in the meta, you need heavy hitters, right? So that's where your fulminators counting as battle line comes into it. And then having the 6-up ward against Lumineth shooting is also good, right? So yeah, I feel like Hammers is probably one of the better ones at the moment if you wanted to play that sort of army. But I feel like you definitely need a heavy hitting unit or two, like a couple of good sized hammers, just to be able to threaten either shooting units or dealing the damage you need to do to kill Mega Gargants, right? So that's a big thing at the moment. It's the DPS
it's a massive
check.
thing. Yeah, it's a massive thing. And you don't have the bodies, you don't have the cheap bodies to kind of block off an objective and say, I'm going to try to push you away from the objective. Some of these lists will have, 5-man models, 3-man models. You're not running a lot of bodies and they'll just step over you. They'll just, claim that objective and it's hard to get it off them.
That's right. Yep.
Speaking of dragons, I wouldn't mind your hot take, and I'm sure Stormcast fans might appreciate the hot take. We were kind of talking a little bit before we went live, and 24 hours ago, we had the Warcom article to say that dragons are changing in their points value. Games Workshop did some additional testing based off community response. And I think it's your unit of 2 Stormdrake Guard went up about 55, 60 points. Krondys and Karazhai didn't go up in points. It was just the single, the double, and the Stormdrake Guard leader.
Night Draconis,
the Night Draconis. They all went up in points slightly. What's your feeling as a Stormcast player? Because I'm sure the rest of the community, as you said on Twitter, they're like, "Yay, dragons! We fixed them! Yay!" Ignoring Sentinels and other things that are kind of terrorizing. But where do you stand?
I hate the fact that it's not so much. I don't really care about the points of dragons, right? I just want to make that very clear at the moment. I feel like though that it's good and bad, right? So the good thing is that they've listened to the community and the backlash, and about the models which haven't even come out yet. But the way that I see it is the models haven't, come out yet. So how can you? What data do you have, right? So I've got a very big opinion about this, but I don't think your channel's appropriate for it too much. But we've gone through a lot as a player base of having the winter FAQ be lackluster because of no data. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't want to get into it too much.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's important for at least Stormcast fans to hear what your thoughts were. I think for me, just look, I think as an observer, and I haven't played the Stormdrake Guard, so I can't comment from experience. They seemed a little bit too powerful for their points value. I welcome the additional play testing. I welcome the points increase if they feel that it's overpowered. And my sense said, yes, it was. But I will say that I would like consistency, and the community has whinged about Lumineth Sentinels now since day one. People have whinged about other things, and it's Gotrek, for example, Gotrek not being a leader. My hope is that they are consistent and they do the same that they did to the Stormdrake Guard. That's my take.
Yeah. If they keep going and don't just stop at the Stormdrake Guard, then fine, bring it on. Fix Pink Horrors again, rewrite the War Scroll for the 5th time. Do something to Sentinels, not just points, but let's make them a bit more interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
Hell, don't just stop at points. Rewrite the whole War Scrolls. Let's do it. Change it up.
Yeah, I think it'd be. I think the only positive thing for me for the Stormdrake Guard is that it is close to Christmas, and people may be asking mummy and daddy or their partner to go buy them a bunch of dragons as a Christmas present. And the last thing I would want is little Timmy building his new dragons. The December FAQ comes out, completely nerfs or changes the army, and they have buyer's remorse and regret. And I don't want that on the community. So I think, if anything, that's the positive, but I don't want to stick on it too much. I think that's, I want to see consistency across the board, not just targeting one thing that was really vocal.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like Stormcast have been unfairly treated over the last couple of updates, with the whole translocation thing and the FAQ missing a whole lot of questions which needed answering, and only focusing on the sort of main negative points that other people had. So I'm really hoping that a lot of that gets fixed.
And Joel, you'll appreciate. Let's make Slangors great. I'd say again, but they were never great. So we talked Stormhost. We've talked a little bit about the dragons. There's been a whole bunch of cool heroes that have been added to Stormcast. And I want to get to your list very soon. I really want to get into the meat around, how you're thinking about it. But is there any sleeper units that you would recommend to a Stormcast player to pick up, or maybe something that was in their collection that they haven't revisited for a while? I mentioned Prosecutors, for example. I certainly wouldn't have picked them up unless, you kind of pointed them out to me. But what have you found through your play testing and your experience and your list building?
I found that a lot of the old cast, so the first generation or first wave stuff, very good at the moment. Well balanced with points and power. I'll also say that I think we all know who's watching this understand that 6 Long Strike Raptors is pretty good. Without going too much into it, but I would encourage.
They have always been good,
and everyone's got them, and they're cheap, right? I'm expecting them to get nerfed into oblivion as well, with the amount of people bitch and moan about them.
They're not that bad. Like talk Sentinels, go nerf them.
Yeah, but I would encourage every Stormcast player to have a shooting unit in your army lists, just so you can take advantage of Unleash Hell and you can poke a little bit. It doesn't have to be 6 long strikes. Could be Judicators with crossbows. Probably my favorite shooting unit in the book at the moment, just because they seem a little bit fairer, but they do more damage than long strike crossbows.
And I did want to talk to you about this because in your list, again, we are ruining Christmas, but you do have Judicators in your list. And one of the things that I quickly noticed is that you had the crossbows. And I don't think I've ever seen Judicators built with crossbows. They're always the Skybolt bow. That's
Yep.
like they always
Yep.
got the bow. Like they never got the crossbow.
Crossbows are way cooler, especially with their new war scroll that they received in the book. They were always pretty sort of average, in my opinion. There was no comparison between them and the regular bow Judicators in the old book. But in the new book, crossbows, man, great looking models, and they do a whole heap of damage with a whole heap of shots. So I was fortunate enough to already have 10 or 15 of them assembled and painted from 5 years ago. So yeah, I lucked out there. The big bow, whatever it's called, it's changed as well. So it doesn't do mortals anymore, but it's neg 2 rend, 2 damage. And then the leader gets an extra shot with that as well. So you've got 3 shots, 3 neg 2, 2 damage, plus then a whole heap of no rend attacks, which are great for whittling down models with high save stacking and all that you just don't really sort of care about, because all that effort to stack their saves just sort of wasted.
Jonathan makes a complimentary point where he talks about Dracolines need to be made better, and I think my perspective, and I'd love you to challenge me or agree with me depending on what you feel, but I feel like old cast, so Generation 1 Liberators, Prosecutors, Retributors, that kind of crew is feeling good right now. New cast, all the stuff that's brand new for 3rd edition is feeling really good. 2nd edition, it feels like that Soul Wars kind of thing. No one's really talking about it. No one's talking about the kitty cats. No one's talking about evocators or sequitors. No one's talking about, a lot of those units other than like the Knight Incantor or maybe Aventus Firestrike. There's kind of like a couple of models people are talking about. Do you feel that, and people say points is too high. Would you agree with that statement?
No, I think they're pointed fine. I just feel like, that's subjective, isn't it? Because they're very hit and miss. So the Vanguard chamber stuff, you've only got the long strikes, which is sort of any decent. And then with the sequitors and all that, I feel like they're maybe pointed a bit too high, actually. I just don't see like 145 points for 5 dudes with a 4 up. It's just, neg 1 rend. I don't know. What sucks about the evocators and the kitty cat evocators is their staffs, or their staves. They change from a 2-inch range to a 1, so you're not going to be spending a reinforcement point on them to get 2 ranks fighting and all that. I don't know. I think that's what sort of put them into the ground a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's still good stuff in there. And, the Lord Aquila is good. The long strikes, as you said, are good. There's still good stuff in there. But I think generally the old stuff fits really well, especially in the Stormkeep side. New cast seems to work really well, especially in Signs of the Storm. Not to say that they're exclusive. They only go there, but just feels like there's, distinctive builds starting to kind of come out.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure they'll have their time in the sun. If they do decrease in points and the meta shifts to something where they're good, bring it on. Yeah.
How are you thinking about them from like a play style perspective? Are you thinking about them offensively, defensively? Magic heavy, hero hammer. There's a lot of different terms. There's castles, there's alpha strikes. We can throw terms till the suns come home. But how do you think Stormcast play right now? And if I was going to start building a Stormcast army, what's working for you?
Stormcast, to me, plays the perfect hammer and anvil style really well. So you've got your hammers, but then you've also got a very durable couple units or whatever in your backfield, holding down the fort. I feel like that sort of 1-2 punch is really good as well. That's how I see them playing. That's how I like to play them as well. Probably about a 50-50 of hammer anvil kind of deal. Yeah. That seems to be working for me anyway. So like protectors or liberators even are great. And that's where one of the things about evocators and they're not sort of ideal at the moment is their save. They've got a 4-up base, just like say a liberator, but the evocators are one of the few which has the 4-up save, which doesn't have a +1, like sort of built into them already. Even prosecutors either have a 4-up +1 or a 3-up base. So
See,
I think that's where they lack a little bit.
Are you looking for those types of things where you're going for a real? You want to be able to absorb a lot of damage because you don't have a lot of wounds to be thrown around, right? And you don't have a lot of cheap bodies. And I think part of this is why hammers, especially, getting a 6-up ward or getting the 5-inch bubble from Gardas, whatever it might be, getting those extra saves can be really important, especially in the meta right now. Is that how you're kind of looking at it? Like you're looking for models that have really durable pluses to the saves, so you don't have to worry about all that defense. You've got, when you need to kind of negate rend, you can go down to a 2 or a 3-up save and still consistently get good damage.
You need to, right? Because Stormcast is an elite army at the end of the day, and every time you lose a couple of models, you actually really notice it. So you need to look for those good saves. You need to be able to look for that good damage to kill things before they can kill you back. And whether that be with shooting or whatever, trying to get rid of their hammers first makes a huge difference with how the army survives and functions. Definitely a necessity, I think, is to be durable but still choppy.
Is that why you're talking about having a shooting unit in there so you can start to kind of pull them down, take out those key units, and then, through your saves, some of your shenanigans about being on objectives, and if you're a storm, keep counting as 3 or whatever it might be, you're winning through attrition? Or so funnily enough, I don't have a shooting, like a good shooting unit in my list later, but I feel like it's the easy way to go about things is to have 6 long strikes or whatever, doing damage where it needs to go, and then you can just sort of mop up with the rest of the army. So I feel like you need to be able to do the damage before you can really take it, but you need to be able to take it as well. Has the board size changes, the new command abilities, has all of these things that have been brought in through 3rd edition, has that changed how you've looked at Stormcast?
Not really, no. There's less stuff on the board nowadays, right? So there's less terrain. It used to be 10, now it's like 8 pieces. There's less models in every army, whether that be because of what the meta is at the moment, I don't know. But the points did go up significantly from 2 to 3. I feel like, they're just as good. The smaller board does help because we are slow. So being able to just be that little bit closer, I guess, to the next unit that you're going to go and kill with, Annihilators or something, is quite nice.
Has that, but that I would imagine, like on first glance, I would imagine that a smaller border size would mean that there's less spaces for me to drop down with like Signs of the Storm, or even like a Relictor teleporting me around the board. There's just less options, right? Now, there's also less bodies on the table, and opponents aren't taking nearly as many screens and chaff that they used to. How have you found being able to like move around the board?
Yeah, well, the changes to coherency really sort of don't help that situation either. So you can't screen as far as what you used to. You can't string 1 unit of 20 zombies all along your backfield, right? Because they have to sort of be in 2 ranks now. So while there's less physical space on the table, it feels like there's more space just because units are got a smaller footprint now by the rules design.
I'm finding that armies are castling. I don't know if you found this, but I found a lot of armies are castling up now, so they're spread out even less.
Yeah, well, that's true as well, right? And the way that you score objectives, you don't necessarily need to hold like all 3 in your deployment. You only need to sort of hold 2 or go for 2 out of the 3. I don't know. I feel like I've got more room to play on a smaller table, funnily enough. Yeah.
Have you actually, before I ask my question, Dream and Nah asking, what do you think of the Incantor and the Heraldor?
The Herald is absolute trash. To me, it just doesn't do anything anymore. Maybe if you're up against Seraphon and they've got all their heroes in the pyramid thing, if you've got 3 Heraldors, you're not going to do that unless if you're only playing against Seraphon, right? The Encanter, though, is awesome. Having that once per game or auto unbind is just unreal. It's worth its weight in gold. And 125 points for a wizard, auto unbind, +1 to wound. Yeah, really good.
Good armor save wizard, even though you've lost your little Encantor bombs when someone charges you. It's still a still good unit. I would definitely consider it in my list.
Yep.
Especially like a lot of people, might be using like an endless spell to kind of alpha strike, or like bridge, for a perfect example. You want to stop that particular endless spell, that particular spell going off. It's great to have that auto unbind.
Mm-hmm. It is, and that's where the smaller board size comes into it as well. So just say if we're deploying across the table from each other, you've got 11 inches, isn't it? Yeah, 11 inches up, and then they've only got is it? That's 30, 41. They've only got 3 inches where they cannot can cast without being auto unbound. So really sort of pushes their heroes back if they want to get a key spell off early. Which is good because you're making more space for yourself essentially, and just the threat of that is unreal.
And to what Lex is saying, 3 Heraldors in Sylvaneth, or Dreamers talking about Seraphon.
Take me back.
Look, they're great as allies, right? If you want to do some mortal wounds, that's perfect for like a Sylvaneth. But if I was a Stormcast player, I think the challenge that I have as an aspiring Stormcast player, someone who's literally building an army right now, I got a chariot. I have some secret boxes under the table here we won't talk about. But like for me, like there's so many choices. There's so many choices, Joel. You don't say anything, but there's a lot of choices in this book. And I think for me, like when I look at literally a whole page of heroes, it's like, where do I start? Which is the hero for me? There's cool heroes like Neve. There's cool heroes like Gardas. There's cool here like so many cool either named heroes or Lord Bastion and things like that. It's like, well, where do I start? And I think when I think about something like the Heraldor, they're just competing for those points.
Yeah, and like sure they're cheap. What are they? 105, I think the Heraldor is. So like it's good value if you wanted a knight hero, but unless if you're going for that sort of like running 3 of them in Sylvaneth, I don't really see them filling any kind of role. I feel like the Vexilla for like an extra 10 points or whatever it is, maybe 15 or 20, I can't remember now. But he does the mortal wounds, and then he also allows your units to reroll their charge rolls if they're wholly 12. So if you wanted to do mortal wound splash, take the Vexilla and not rely on the Herald choosing a piece of terrain. I just don't see the value, to be honest. Just doesn't do anything.
Do you like to build your lists with a lot of heroes? And again, we're in this meta right now that's very hero hammer, where it's almost like 1/3 or even half of people's points seem to be either going into a mega hero or a couple of really tanky heroes, right? And you've got some good ones, whether it's the Star Drake, or is it the Drake Templar, the Star Drake. I'm always paranoid with the Vindictors. Like I'm like, I've got to pronounce you like your 100 names correct. But you've also got, Yggdrasil, you've got the Celestine Prime, you've got Bastion, you've got, let alone Krondys and Karazhai that are coming. Do you think you're better off spending your points in heroes, in troops, in a couple of really big hammers or anvils, or spread out across the board? Like how do you think about your distribution of points?
I feel like at the end of the day, more bodies is better than more support for less. So, and that's sort of the Bok player coming out in me as well there. I only ever like to run 3, maybe 4 heroes at most in Stormcast. I feel like if you're maxing out all 6, then you just got nothing on the table, right? They only count as 2 models. It makes it really hard to score objectives late game, especially when you've got less damage output, right? Yeah. I like to run 3 or 4, I think, is where I sort of cap out.
Is that being driven by your core battalions, or is it you're picking a list and then finding the battalions that suit you? Like what's leading the horse?
Bit of both, I think, the combo. Yeah, if you want to go battle regiment, then you're only going to be taking 3 heroes, right? If you want warlord, then you probably want 3 anyway. Well, yeah, you need 3, right, for the extra artifacts or enhancement or whatever you want. Yeah, I think when I originally write a list, it would say I'd maybe cut one out at the end to make room for other stuff and make the core battalions fit. But I don't put the core battalion in first. So yeah, I'm not, when I write a list, I'm not looking to make it a one drop with battle regiment. But if it works better, then yes, I will do it at the end.
Yeah, I'm kind of building my list right now with about 60 to 70% of the list done. Then I kind of looked at some of the battalions that best work for me, and then use that extra points to kind of build it out, make some adjustments appropriately. I'm not a massive fan of battle regiment. I've never worried too much about the drop game. I'm someone who loves the counterplay. I love, letting people kind of drop their models and then responding appropriately. I always get worried. I don't really like having this alpha plan, like, right, this is exactly how I'm going to drop and go from there. How do you look at the battle regiment versus something like Warlord and Hunters and, some of the other, like the higher drop lists?
Yeah. Well, with Stormcast specifically, we're very blessed, I suppose, to have Signs of the Storm available to us, so we can put half our units up in the sky. So it is possible and quite easy to just say, bugger the drops, we'll go to 20 or whatever, and we'll just keep half of my stuff up in the sky that you're not going to be able to target. So it's the safest way to keep your models alive, right? By not having them on the table, funnily enough. But I don't know. Again, the Bok player coming out, I was always used to having a 1 or a 2 drop back in AOS 2 with Beast of Chaos. So I like to be in the driver's seat. I like to be making the decisions on who's going first or second, and setting up the battle, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely easy enough to not worry about drops with Stormcast. So you can take the extra enhancement if there's a cool combo that you wanted to get off. Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think it's a good consideration, because a lot of people, and I want to ask you this question in a minute, but there's a little U-turn I want to make first. But a lot of people are thinking about, do I go low drops, 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drops, or do I not care, right? What's the pros and cons by going Warlord and get an extra artifact, a spell, a prayer, or whatever it might be? How much do I want to be in control? And, Signs of the Storm definitely gives you the flex to not have to worry about that. But is the same true with Stormkeep, right? Nothing's going in the sky. You're relying on the Lord Relictor to be teleporting you around the board. Do you think owning or having a limited amount of drops in a Stormkeep list is important?
I think so, yes. When I've played Gardas Stormkeep, it's always been a 1 drop list, just because you need to be able to control the board and do your damage where you need to. Because normally in the Stormkeep list, you've got slightly less damage than, say, a Scion's army, just because you don't have that sort of alpha threat. You do have translocation, obviously, with the shooting unit, but yeah, you need to be able to get onto the objectives and sort of push out of your deployment zone, because you don't want to be bogged down when you've only got Liberators and Vindictors. Yeah.
No, that's fair. No, it is good, because some people are, and I get this question a lot, should I go 1 drop or low drop, or should I go the extra artifact? And I think it's a really interesting question, especially from like a projection of power point of view. And, if you aren't going to go low drops, having those long strikes, for example, to keep your opponent honest, and being able to, just to threaten them or maybe force their hand before they can, make you waste a turn. With you determining often who goes first, who goes second, because you're going, really low drops, how do you consider who goes first or who goes second in the first battle round? Is there any considerations? I know each opponent's going to be different and every scenario is going to be different, but if I'm a player going, right, I don't know if I should take, because I see this a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. It's like, oh, do I go first? Do you go first? And there's that real moment of hesitation. It's like, well, if you're going to build a low drop, you should know what those triggers are going to be. So what's in your mind when you go, do I go first or do I go second?
Regardless of what army that I'm playing, it's always weighing up how much damage can they do if I give them first turn? Do I waste one of their turns? Do I want to be doubled by this army? Do I want to double this army? Right. So yeah, all those things match up dependent, obviously, that I'm sort of factoring into my overall decision if I'm low drop. But that's why I like being in the driver's seat for and making that decision, because I've been doing it for a very long time with a very bad army. So, yeah, it's just the playstyle that I'm sort of used to. But yeah, there's lots of things to consider, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, I guess.
And do you have a preferred one? Like, do you like going second or do you like going first?
I usually give the first turn away more, just because I find that I don't want to get doubled. But if there is an opening from an opponent's mistake or whatever, and if I can capitalize on that with a translocation and do whatever that I need to do, then yes, I will. But yeah, it's very matchup dependent, and it's more of the case of giving away first turn, I think.
Yeah. I probably tend to be giving away the first turn because I like to build a lot of lists that have good magic. I like a little bit of shooting. I don't go too heavy on the shooting, but when I have a list with a bunch of magic, and if I don't have your models in range to, make the most of my spell casting, I've only got 5 rounds of spell casting, right? And if you reduce one of them, then, and the impacts of magic in turn 4, turn 5 aren't really that great. So really, I've got 2-3 rounds at best of magic, and I'm putting a lot of points in my magic. So getting the most out of things like magic and shooting, I traditionally give away first, because I know that the damage, and you're not going to get too much of the head start you're going to get on victory points. Like, it's not that great.
Well, going back to what I was saying before, with the way the objectives have changed now, you don't need to control the whole board, but you still do need to get out of your deployment zone by some stage of the game. And yeah, like if you move on to the objective, can I charge you in my first turn? There's so much to weigh up with drops, but it's just what you're used to and how you want to play the army. I don't like having a set game plan going into a tournament and saying, this is how I'm going to play this army all 5 games. It's always going to change.
How do you go with battle tactics with Stormcast? I feel like you've got a lot of tools between the new ones you've got in your book. I think I look at the whatever battle pack you're playing, whether it's the core rules or the GBH, I feel like they're all achievable for most parts.
Yeah, pretty good. Usually 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 per game. That's if it lasts that long. Yeah, and then grand strategies usually hold the line or dominating presence. So they're quite easy to achieve as well. Yeah. You go.
I was going to ask, is there any particular ones you like to use either early, mid, or late game battle tactic wise?
With a Stormkeep, it's really easy just to run 3 support heroes behind your blocks of Vindictors and Liberators. So yeah, that's obviously the easy turn 1 go-to for most armies, essentially. But what's the one where you have to go and take objectives and stuff? That's pretty easy to do, especially in Stormkeep again. Killing battle line, simple, because we've actually got hammers that can do stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I find them quite simple to get.
No, that's fair. One last burning question before I pull up your list, and it kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about anyway. Was I mentioned you've got a lot of good heroes in Drassa, Prime Time, Bastian, etc. But there's a lot of opponents that have even better heroes: Archaon, Morathi, Gotrek, Nagash. How are you finding handling these god tier superheroes with Stormcast?
It's an interesting question, because a lot of armies simply can't deal with them, right? I feel like Stormcast has the damage now to be able to, kill an Archaon in a turn if we need to, or drop a Mega Gargant in a turn if we need to. 4 Fulminators usually can drop a Gargant by themselves with a few buffs, obviously. Grand Hammer Annihilators can one-shot Archaon, depending on how many save stacking buffs he's got. Long Strike Raptors and Judicators and all that, shooting in the hero phase, and then again in the shooting phase, it's only once per game, but it's enough to be able to drop a techless or whatever. Force out all the resources that they have for the +1s to save over multiple phases. I feel like Stormcast can cope pretty well against things which are high points, high damage, high save.
What about like Morathi? Because Morathi, you've got the tools with this shooting, right, to chip those 3 damage. But what you lack is cheap bodies to kind of throw out and sacrifice. And my last game against Stormcast, I charged Morathi straight into the unit of 4 formulators and just like killed them pretty easily. I, sucked up the charge and, really only limited them to like 3 damage or 4 damage at most. It wasn't much. How are you finding that? Because you don't have the cheap bodies to handle Morathi.
Yeah, I'm actually of the opinion that a lot of people don't have about Morathi. I don't actually rate her overly highly. I feel like she's got the big monster syndrome, right, where she can be really swingy. Sure, you can only do 3 damage a turn, but as long as you're pushing that damage onto her every turn, then she's dead before the game sort of gets down to a point where, she's going to make a big difference. I feel like Vindictors can tank her pretty well. Even Liberator, Protectors, actually, they're probably the best one because they just don't care about her rend. If you've got any counter to auto unbind Mind Razor, then you can. Let her do her thing and just make sure you're doing the 3 damage and she's fine, right?
Yeah. I know you can do the damage. It was more about often you want to throw or screen with some cheap bodies to kind of get her away from your juicy stuff, or like what I did, charge the formulators and the good stuff and know that I can only take 3 damage back.
Yeah. The key to beating Morathi is not sending your formulators into Morathi or letting her charge them.
Well, she was my last drop, so I counterplayed where the formulators went, and I just went cool, just straight up. And what like Nagash or Techless, some of the other Alariel, any other thoughts on those god tier models?
Nagash is an interesting one because he's got such a high mortal wound output with just arcane bolt spam, right? So I haven't actually played against him with Stormcast with this book, but I don't know. That's probably the toughest one out of all of the god sort of monsters. Zarkaon, he can't Slayer a King's Fulminators, right? He can't just one-shot things, which are important. Nagash is an interesting one. I think if you can charge him, though, or show him down early, right? So if you're one-drop with long strikes, then you can put a fair bit of damage into him before he can get all the save stacking up. But again, he's 900 points, right? So you just got to kill the rest of the army.
And that's what I was going to say. When in doubt, don't put too much focus onto those god tier heroes. And the Mega Gargant with the Amulet of Destiny, cool. Ignore it. Take out everything else. Score those battle tactics. Score those victory points. Take over the objectives. Don't waste your time trying to pull down something that is not going to give you a good return on your investment. But here's the list that we want to talk about, and my template's all hot garbage. I'll fix it up. But you have gone something a little bit different, and that was the Knight Excelsior. And in the past, we talked about hammers, and I know you've been building some hammers lists, but this to me was a fascinating list. And when I picked this out of your 4 lists, you're like, this is my damage dealer. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. So, for anyone who can't see the list, maybe you listen to this on a podcast later, you are Knight Excelsior, you've got the Inspiring Triumph, and you've got the Dominating Presence. That's an interesting one. Grand Strategy. You have, that's an interesting one. You have the Lord Castellan, who's not the general. I was thinking it was a general. It's not. It's Lord Castellan. You got the Celestine Prime. Good. I like Prime Time. I want to talk more about Prime Time. 4 up.
Oh, yeah.
You have the Lord Imperatant, which is the General Master of Magic with the Arcane Tome and the Celestial Blade spell. You've got 6 Annihilators with the Grand Hammers, and I want to know why you've gone Grand Hammers instead of the Shield Boys. You've got 10 Protectors. You've got 5 Liberators. You've got 5 Judicators. You've got 3 Prosecutors under Hunters of the Heartland and Battle Regiment. And I also want to know why you don't have What did you leave me a YouTube comment about? Was it Praetors?
Praetors, yeah.
Praetors, yes. Like you were like, this list needs more Praetors. So I want to ask why are there no Praetors in this list? But
Okay.
tell me, let's go from the top. What's this list
All
all about? Why is this the damage dealer? What drove these decisions?
So importantly, it's Signs of the Storm, and it's a 3-drop list. Right? So sure, you're not 1, but 3 is good enough. You can potentially just swap out the battle regiment for a warlord battalion if you wanted to, but that's neither here or there. Anyway, so the Castellan, I was actually mentioning earlier about playing a more hammer and anvil style of army, right? So in this list, your anvil is the 10 protectors and the Lord Castellan. So you're going to be a 3-up save with +2 just from their war scroll and then the Castellan buff. It makes them really tanky. Celestine Prime, he's just a beast, man. I love the fact that he can auto charge 12 inches. That makes it really easy to get into, say, Sentinels or Cruel Boy shooting dudes, whatever they're called, or any other sort of shooting army. Shooting unit rather.
And just for anyone who doesn't know what you're talking about here, like why can the prime time do that?
So on his once per turn on his war scroll, you can change the dice roll to a result of his choice. Now it can be that it's before you've rolled the dice, so you can change a hit roll to a 6 or a wound roll to a 6 or a save roll to a 6. But most importantly, you can change your charge roll to 12 because it's just the dice roll. It's not just a dice. So
because in the old rules, it used to be a single die. Like you could change a single die, which obviously made charging a little bit confusing, but it allows you to. It says when you're okay. So when it's a 2d6 roll, the charge being a 2d6 roll, you can re-roll. You can do that. Okay, but it can't be re-rolled.
No.
This roll can't be re-rolled. So I can't remember, I remember playing a Chaos Army not too long ago, and they forced me to re-roll my charge. So, when you throw that down and go, right, I want the 12-inch charge, no one can force you to re-roll it too.
Yep. So he's in there. He slaps pretty hard, but I like to drop him in by turn 2. I think the 5 attacks that he can get from coming in turn 2 is good enough. And with the prime or with any reserve unit in this edition, they have to be on the table at turn 3, otherwise they're just dead. That's including the prime. So I like to drop him down by turn 2. 5 attacks is enough. And if you hold him for turn 3, then you're sort of missing out on potentially 10 attacks, right? And you don't earn those attacks back over the course of the game, in my opinion. Well, hang on, what is it?
And War Machine in the chat, I'm not going to bring it up just because it'll overcome our beautiful faces. But War Machine mentioning, can the Prime also drop 7 inches away from the Imperatant?
No, he can't because he doesn't have Thunderstrike armor. So he's always 9 inches or more, wherever you wanted to drop him. So only the new stuff can drop down 7 inches away, and it can only be an Annihilator or Vindictors or Praetors, or any of the infantry. You can't drop anything with more than 3 wounds, 3 wound characteristic, 7 away with the Imperatant.
So I can't drop a chariot from the sky, and has like those mad gangster kind of just bounces as it hits the ground.
So you can't do that with them. You can't do it with the new dragons either, because they've got too many wounds also. So always 9 away with those guys. Speaking of the Imperatant, probably one of the best heroes in the book for just generic sort of hero, in my opinion. You get 10 free command points essentially over the course of a game with him. He has that drop down 7 inches ability, and he's got a Griffhound, so he's got a few extra wounds as well. So he's more than 6, so he can't be auto slain by the noms on Star Drakes or Gorgons or whatever, or Gargants. I don't think Gargants can pick up I think he's 7 or 8 wounds. I can't remember.
No, you've got to double or equal. You got to double or more so you can't touch that. But and just for clarity, folks, when Joel says he gets free 10 command points, you don't literally get 10 free. It's once per turn. This unit can issue a command without a point being spent. So, so things like all out attack, all out defense, redeploy, all that good stuff. He doesn't actually have a command ability on his war scroll. So it's just whatever's in your other options.
Yeah. And now the reason why I've gone for the Master of Magic and the Arcane Tome artifact and trait is because I don't actually have an Incanter in this list, even though I reckon they're awesome. I just want that Mystic Shield capability mainly. Then also the Celestial Blades, which is a +1 to wound spell for melee weapons. So that's great on protectors to get them wounding on 2s. Your Annihilators are already wounding on 2s. With the Grand Hammers, so you don't really need it for them. But yeah, having the extra Mystic Shield or the potentially extra damage output's awesome. Yeah.
And the is it the Knight Excelsior? You have that interesting rule that allows you, if you have if you have less models than your opponent, in combat, is it +1 to hit, +1 to wound? So it brings your paladins down to usually like 2s and 2s or 3s and 2s, some ridiculously low number.
That doesn't come into effect much in this meta. As we've talked earlier, it's mainly monster and hero mash. When hordes do come back, protectors will be great because then you don't have to put the spell on them. But they're a unit of 10, so they need to be hitting something with 11 or more models, right? Mainly why I've gone Excelsior is to get the Paladins and the Annihilators as battle line. That's the main reason.
One of the questions I had with that rule, because I thought it was an interesting rule, your Paladins are hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s if they are outnumbered, right? And that kind of got me thinking. I was wondering, Joel, why don't you do 2 units of 2 Annihilators? So 2 units of 3 Annihilators, so you can always guarantee yourself that +1 to hit, +1 to wound. And I know the answer. But I was just curious to hear what you would have to say, because I guess some people might have that question.
Yeah. So the answer is actually just because I want to kill something, whether that means I overkill it also. So going into a Mega Gargant, I want to make sure that they're dead. I don't want to have my units models being taken off because 3 couldn't do the job, That's the reason.
Yeah, plus you obviously get a lot of value from your command points, right? If you've got 2 units of 3 Annihilators, where do you put all out attack? Where do you put all out defense? You're splitting your resources. So having that one big unit of 6, you're going to mess something up good, which then leads to why the Grand Hammers as opposed to the other build.
Yeah, so the Grand Hammers over the regular shield guys, very simple. They just do a lot more damage. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but they're sort of around par with Fulminators, like 4 Fulminators. The -2 Ren 3 damage is just unreal. The mortal wounds on the charge, mortal wounds when they drop down. They're just a very solid damaging unit. That's why. I feel like the shield Annihilators just don't sort of do anything. And the 200 points, I reckon they're actually overcosted by about 30, 40 points. They just don't do anything except for dropping down doing mortals. Before the Battle Tome came out, but the box came out with all the new Stormcast dudes. I was very underwhelmed by them, so I don't like to really run them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the armor save, and you're like, oh, it's like a 2-up armor save. So it's quite tempting. But then when you start doing the maths and look at the Grand Hammers, and if you really do need that 2-up armor save, you can still Mystic Shield and all out defense those Grand Hammers. But the damage output is just so significantly higher with the Grand Hammers, right?
Oh yeah, there's no comparison. They're unreal.
So why not the Formulators? Why would you go the Grand Hammers over the Formulators?
Because this is Sion's list, right? So I've got the Annihilators and the Prime as sort of 2 hammer pieces, with the 10 Protectors as the anvil. The Fulminators and the Annihilators, while they have similar sort of damage capabilities, they don't have the same role in an army. I feel like Fulminators are more of a flanking unit that need to be coming out from behind, like a shield wall, basically, because they don't synergize well with the Imperator. You have to spend CP to get them re-rolling charges. I just feel like there's a bit more of a shock and awe style. I just feel like the Annihilators do drop down and kill something better than what the Fulminators do.
Yeah, and you are really relying on the charge and getting those more. I found the mortal wounds can be swingy with some of the formulators, but they're really good. You know, you obviously saw. Take it with a grain of salt, depending on where you see the world. But Ben Johnson, did really well with a whole bunch of formulators with Warhammer World, right? So they can do the damage, but do you want to overinvest? Do you want to do with them? I think the answer is they're not the only damage dealing tool you've got up you're in your arsenal.
Yeah, relying on 9-inch charges isn't ideal, especially for competitive play. So usually I'd only have 2 units in the sky, which is the Prime, who can auto 12 a charge. And then you've got the Annihilators, who can drop down 7 away, and then they're re-rolling that charge as well. So that's as reliable as it sort of gets. Just trying to take the dice out of it. And then with those Annihilators too, give them the Holy Command, Unleash Thy Hatred. You're giving them all an extra attack. And they can just blow anything up. 2-inch range, so unit of 6 is fine for coherency.
So that's how you're handling the Mega Gargants, the Archaons, these superheroes. Is you're doing a super buffed up Annihilator, throw down that Holy Command. They're in Hunters of the Heartland, so you can't roar at them to stop them from getting a CP. And do what more War Machine say as well. The Imperator in the sky, so he doesn't get shot off before you bring down the Annihilators, is an option.
That is definitely an option also. He doesn't need to start on the table, that's for sure. Usually the way that I'll play this is Prosecutors drop down, they absorb the Unleash Hell, and then the Prime goes into the shooting unit, and then the Annihilators will usually go into a big hammer or something that needs to die, like a Mega Gargant or whatever. Yeah. To kill Gotrek, if I ever ran into him, 10 Protectors usually can do that, just because they've got so many attacks. They're an unreal unit. They're durable, and they've got lots of attacks with -2 rend. So, yeah. You can also do the Holy Command on them for Unleash Thy Hatred, because they're also a Paladin unit. And it's the only way to give Star Soul Maces an extra swing. So there's 4 Star Soul Maces in a unit of 10, typically. So that's going to be potentially 8 D3 mortal wounds. So they can also do damage as well.
It's interesting because a lot of my experience of late has been focused on not Protectors, but Retributors. And even like back in the day, Retributors always seemed to be a bit more popular to support the Liberators. But you've gone and kind of found, the Judicator with the crossbow. You've gone back to find the Prosecutors. You've even gone into the Protectors. What drove you to go Protectors over the traditional Retributor?
Again, just for that +1 save on their War Scroll. So yeah, a 3-up save with a +1 native is just it's almost as good as you get, right? Unless if you're Annihilator with a shield. And yeah, just having them durable, it's 30 wounds in the unit on a 2-up save essentially. Potentially 1-up, potentially 0-up, potentially +1 -1 or whatever. You can save stack on them really well. And I feel like just the way that the game is at the moment, whether you love it or hate it, you sort of need something to be able to save stack on. It's just the way that it is, right? There's no point complaining about it. You just got to sort of play into it a little bit. So that's the unit that can do that in my list. Just to tie stuff up. And they're also in Hunters, so they can't be roared or stomped or anything like that.
And obviously having the guarantee that you can issue a command on them always and not have to worry about being roared is pretty good.
Yeah. And usually I'm not spending a command point to give them +1 to save because of the Imperator behind them.
Do you find your
Yeah.
Liberators are a good screen? Because I imagine, like, I look at them and go, well, 5 Liberators isn't strong enough to be an anvil. They're not going to soak up that much damage. It's only 5. To me, probably 10 Liberators would feel a bit more comfortable to soak up damage. Are they just like objective scorers? They just kind of shield off parts of the board. Is that how you kind of use your libs?
Yeah, they're just zoning out a space on the board where the protectors can't. Because I don't mind if people go into the protectors, right? Because they don't really need to be screened. They're just a very durable unit by themselves. The Liberator's just there for bodies essentially, and just you can sort of castle with this list a little bit. It's not ideal, but you can with those Liberators sort of blocking off a section. The Judicators with the Boltstorm crossbows are there for unleashing hell, just to push that little bit of extra damage in if something wants to charge. It's interesting. It's very different to what you typically see, but it can do a lot of damage and it's a lot of fun. Low model count, but you got good units in there to sort of carry you a little bit.
Yeah, it took me a while. Like when I was looking over your list, and this
I did send you about 20 of them.
Look, you did abuse me with like a million lists, and I was trying to understand. Like I'm trying to look at the list, go like, how does this work? Like, what is he trying to do? And this certainly was a lot more of a technical style of build because it's not as obvious as some of the other lists out there. And I think even like when I looked at the and I keep going back to the prosecutors, right? Because I think they got some really interesting play. And you mentioned one of the initial questions I had was why'd you go hammers over the javelin? I love my prosecutors with the javelin. They do an extra bunch of damage when you're outside of 9, but you're using them to soak up unleash hell, to use the 3d6 charge. So you're using them. I guess the hammers make sense.
Well, it's 5 points cheaper at the end of the day,
which obviously fits into your list. You don't have the 5 points to spare. I guess my other question for those is, and this probably ties into the Stormdrake Guard with their 3-inch coherency. You've got the prosecutors with 3-inch coherency, not 1. Do you do anything with your prosecutors 3-inch, because you see a lot of 40k, right? 40k does a lot of pinning. They do some shenanigans with that kind of extended coherency. Have you done anything interesting, any tricks or techniques that maybe you'd share with your prosecutors, or are they just purely throw them up and soak damage?
Yeah, they're just fodder essentially. I'm trying to think how you could use the 3-inch coherency to your advantage. I think jumping over units and sort of attacking something on the other side if you really wanted to, but they don't do a whole lot of damage. You can give one of them like a great weapon, so they're not too bad, I guess, in combat. But good for screening out bigger parts of the board if you're up against like a Maw Crusher or something. But I don't think there's too much shenanigans going on, in my opinion.
Yeah,
nothing out of the ordinary.
I'm obviously not the 40k coach, and I know there's issues like spillover, like this spillover, and like the way that wounds are allocated in 40k are very different to Sigmar. So pinning in 40k and the spillover, you can probably do a bit more and kind of pin models with multiple, within 3. I guess for us, if you pin a hero, for example, I guess you might be able to do some things around like piling in and kind of maybe you could stretch out the way that someone piles in with coherency. Maybe that kind of, you could mess your opponent up a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
There's little advantages, I guess, to the coherency rule, but whether that's actually important or not in a specific game is questionable.
No, like it's not like a tactic. I'm going to rush up my prosecutors. I'm going to pin this. I'm going to try to do this coherency stuff. No, if it happens to happen, it doesn't. It doesn't. But I think just looking at your prosecutors a little bit differently with 3 inches may open up some extra options. And especially, with some of these larger based models and how you've got to do coherency, maybe if you use prosecutors on one side and then pin them with something else on the other, you might actually completely mess up their pile in combat phase, maybe.
Yeah. You never know, right? But it's got the potential to do stuff like that, yeah.
Interesting question. Do you think? I mean, obviously, this is your list, but do you think it might be a bit single-minded with the way you're thinking? It looks like you can just screen it out, and then some of those units are out in the open.
I mean, yeah, isn't every list sort of single-minded in a way? You can alter your game plan. You don't have to bring the stuff on all at the same time. You can sort of bleed your opponent out a little bit. You could even put the protectors in deep strike if you really wanted to. There's a little bit of play. But yes, no, it is a little bit one-dimensional in terms of just hammers and stuff. But this is just a list that we chose, right? You could drop the Prime and the Judicators and put in 6 Raptors if you were worried about people zoning you out. It's just the concept that we're talking about here rather than just the list itself.
And I think it's important to acknowledge, we're thinking about where the meta is right now. So if you're going to have the bow snakes, the auric cruel boys, you've got to get to those archers. Cool, you've got a really cool strategy. But if you're playing, I don't know, Khorne, then you don't need to be doing, avoiding Unleash Hell. You don't need to be thinking about leaping over screens. So the way you would use your army would probably be very different.
Yeah, well, it's hard to also zone out, auto 12-inch charge and 3d6 charge with flying units. So, if you really wanted to zone it out, you could, but you're going to need a lot of space to do it.
Trevor has the same question I had initially, other than the fact that the prosecutors have the 3d6 charge. But Trevor was saying that, would Aether Wings do the same job that the protectors are doing for less points? Now, that in theory, it's true. If you were just trying to avoid Unleash Hell, Aether Wings do that job, but they don't have the 3d6 charge. They don't have the armor save. What are your thoughts, Aether Wings versus prosecutors?
Well, what are you going to do? You're going to take 3 Aether Wings and hope to roll a 9 up on 2 dice, or you can just do it almost guaranteed, right, with 3 dice. Obviously, you're going to fail it sometimes, but yeah, for the role that they're providing in the list of essentially guaranteeing eating an Unleash Hell for your 2 hammers to get in, they do a lot better than Aether Wings.
And to the comment, we were talking earlier about, the one-dimensional, with things like, we know long strikes work, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, if you have power projection and you want to kind of snipe people off with mortal wounds, having that unit of 6 long strikes do the job. But there's, I applaud you for trying a few things differently. I know when I actually played against Trevor, I played, and he was toying around with 10... what are they called? Judicators. He had 10 Judicators as opposed to the 6 long strikes. And it was interesting to see how he was playing around with his list and using people like Indrasa and Rally to keep those 10 models keep coming back with a really nice Liberator or Vindictor screen, where the Rally and the coming back to life with the 6 long strikes isn't nearly as effective because it's only 6 bodies as opposed to a unit of 10.
That's right. I feel like I've played against Raptors lots in the past, right, with various armies, and they've never really been too much of an issue just because they are so fragile. A lot of armies these days have a lot of splash damage, so splash mortal wounds. Look at Seraphon. They have to come on the table at some point if you're playing in Scions, and I just feel like they die too quick. Personally, I don't normally run them. I actually think that shooting with long strike Raptors is more one-dimensional than the list of which I've provided tonight. It's very boring.
Look, it's a necessity in some armies, especially like when Lumineth and Daughters are shooting you. You need something that can shoot them back and maybe shoot them a little harder.
Yep.
What about some other shooting options like your castigators, your ballistas? You don't see ballistas very often anymore. There was like this little window where people would actually use ballistas and they would drop them to the sides of the board and like pip heal, but that kind of dropped pretty quickly. And poor old Lord Ordinator hasn't left his city of Sigmar in years. He's stuck in Greywater. What's
happened with the ballistas, unfortunately, is due to not being able to stack hit rolls anymore, right? So pluses to hit, you're only getting max +1. So the good profile of 2d6 shots is only ever hitting on 3s. Whereas in the past, if you had an Ordinator and a Hurricanum or whatever, and you could get them on 2s. Their single shot's nice. It's got the -3 rend, but it's d6 damage, which is always going to be a 6, right? No, wrong. It's always going to be a 1. That's why you got to look at random dice rolls. Yeah, they're interesting. I think 140 points is maybe a little pricey for what they do, but they have gone up in wounds and all that. So yeah, I don't know. They're not a bad option, I think, if you can't afford Judicators.
And maybe kind of lastly, I know it's getting a little bit late, and we could talk again forever because this book is just so big. And I asked Joel, I'm like, send me a list, and he literally sent me like 20 lists at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, this is an assault on my eyes. But you've got so many different dragon builds. Whether it's with Star Drakes, you've got like a million heroes. Will you be considering adding a dragon or more, whether it's Krondys, Karazhai, or your Storm Drake Guard? And how will this list change when those dragons drop, if any?
This specific list that we've been talking about tonight probably won't change, but I do love Krondys and Karazhai. It's been my phone wallpaper, actually, that artwork that they've released where they were killing all the Iron Jaws. So I love them. Love my dragons. Don't really care too much for the little guys, but I just want the 2 big ones. So I've never played an army with, a big centerpiece model which can actually go and fuck something up, right?
Would you run both? Drake. Would you run both at the same time?
Yeah. I've got, like, one of my favorite lists I've got is Drakesworn Templar as the general with Master of the Celestial Menageries for the -1 to wound. Then the Krondys and Karazhai, and 3 units of Prosecutors in the Tempest Lords. That's 2,000 points. Bring it on.
Is that a shit list, or is that like a competitive list?
It could be both. Because all the dragons.
Would it go well at a tournament, or is it a bit more for like lolsy and like, oh, I've got 2 dragons, this is great?
Well, I ran 3 Star Drakes a couple of weeks ago and won 3 games out of 3 in Bendigo. So I mean, it is a bit memey, bit spammy, but I feel like they can work still. Given that there's not many screens, the unit footprints are smaller, there's more space on the table to get into where you need to go. And man, Krondys and Karazhai's tail, that weapon is just absolutely absurd for when the meta shifts to hordes again. So I reckon you could go all right. You could probably go 3-2 at like a big tournament.
I think definitely, like, I like Karazhai. No, Krondys. I like Krondys. Wizard Dragon is Krondys.
Yeah.
I'm so used to calling them Mufasa and Scar, because they look like.
I just call them Big Red and Big Blue, mate.
I like Krondys. I think initially I was a Karazhai person. I'm like, yeah, combat dragon, yeah. But then when I took my little Timmy hat off for a second and I looked at it, and the board control that Krondys can do some really strong magic, and his combat profile isn't that far off Karazhai, that I'm like, actually, like, utility wise, I think Krondys is better value than Karazhai, because Karazhai is like a one-trick pony. He's just kill things, stack his bonuses, the end.
Yeah. What I like about Karazhai is, how he can heal and get extra attacks and all that. And it's any time that you kill a unit, so it's not like capped to 1 unit a turn or whatever. So if you can get into a unit of zombies or whatever and kill the Necromancer and the Vampire Lord behind them, and you kill it all, which is quite easy to achieve, really, then you're getting +2 attacks for the rest of the game, and you're healing a wound. It's I feel like you've got a lot of potential to level him up very quickly.
I've been thinking about Karazhai in my Hammer Hall army, and when I get him into the opponent's territory, I can double attack or double pile with that command point. I'm like, that is just value for money. Like, prime time in Hammer Hall was good. Karazhai in Hammer Hall is going to be off the charts.
Unreal, yes. I do think there's a spot to run both of them, so both of the brothers in the same list, because Krondys' spell synergizes really well with Karazhai's attacks, right? So turning a point of save off on you against an enemy like Archaon, for example. So his jaws and stuff are -4 end essentially. You know, tell me how much your save stacked again.
Luke brings up a comment, and I know you were a Praetors man in the comment section in my last video, and Luke was mentioning it's funny how Praetors can prevent wounds to Karazhai or Krondys, except if the dragon scions is not as not battlefield to start the game assigned as Praetors. So what's this Praetor bodyguard?
So
I'm not too familiar with the War Scroll.
Yeah, Praetors are a really good unit for 165 points. I feel like if you're relying on like a Gardas or whatever to really survive and make your army durable, then they're a must. What is it? It's a 2-up, I think. 3-up. They take the wounds on them.
3-up, on a 3 to a 4.
And then on a 5-up, on a 5-up, they just completely ignore the damage. So very solid. You can put them on the big dragons because there's no limit to what size hero. All the Liz is just a Stormcast hero. So having Krondys like in a list, you can put 3 Praetors assigned to him for the game just to make him really durable.
I know what Luke's saying now. They're looking at the War Scroll and now rereading what Luke was saying, talking about the fact because with the Praetors, you've got to have the model on the battlefield. So if you try to deep strike Krondys or your Praetors, then you're not going to be able to do the bodyguarding essentially. But if you had Krondys or Karazhai on the battlefield, you had a unit of Praetors on there. They're both on the battlefield. That means the Praetors could be essentially a bodyguard and when they take damage, as long as they're within 3 inches, on a 1 to a 2, that hero takes the damage anyway. On a 3 to a 4, the wound is reallocated to the Praetors, and then on a 5 to a 6, the wound is negated. The wound or mortal wound is negated. So, and it's probably been one of the big issues with Krondys and Karazhai is they have no mortal wound protection. And being unique heroes, it means you can't give them the Amulet of Destiny, or there's not really many ways to give them a mortal wound save.
What you can do is instead of assigning Praetors to them, you can just assign a Gardas to them instead, so they have a 5-up ward. That's probably the best way, or just running them in hammers, right? And they're always basically got a 6-up ward wherever they are, because they're always going to be fighting on objectives. So there are ways to make them more durable, which you wouldn't normally see by just looking at the War Scroll. You need to know the book a little bit as well.
A couple of comments from the chat. One from Jonathan Jonathan always asks me about Mega Gargants. He's obsessed with megas. Would you consider a mega in your Stormcast, or do you think like the dragons, or you've got too many options taking up that 500 points?
Yeah, look, I think because it's the Kraken Eater, isn't it? He'd be really good
you get Bundo kicking the objective.
Yeah. So it'd be really good in a Redeemer Stormkeep list, I think. Just to get the objectives closer together, because you really want to be centered around Gardas, right? So by having 2 objectives there that you can contest with your castle, the better. Well, it's better than spreading out. So I think that would be the only time that I'd use him if I really wanted to have the kick, but I haven't needed it so far.
Yeah. And what about Flamingo Pie mentioning, Karazhai, surprised that we are looking so favorably on Karazhai when it's very comparable to Kragnos, and people generally rubbish Kragnos. He's like a one-trick pony. Can he charge you and do a lot of mortal wounds on the charge, or he dies to a stiff breeze? Thoughts on that comparison?
Well, Karazhai's a dragon, and dragons are way cooler than a model that should have been in Beast of Chaos. So yeah. No, I think the buffs that you can get in Stormcast really tips Karazhai and Krondys damaged sort of over the edge a little bit in some instances. Yeah, because Kragnos only has however many attacks, right? And that's sort of it. Whereas Krondys and Karazhai, their tail. It's not about the claws or the jaws, it's the tail. The tail is the key to that war scroll.
Because the tail
Just
attack
getting...
it's 3 inches, hits on 3, wounds on a 3, rend 2, damage 3, but the attack sequence is a C below. And so the attack characteristic of the tail is equal to the amount of enemy models within 3 inches of the attacking model. So he's obviously got a big base. I can't.
Yeah, I don't know how big it is. I'm guessing it's like a 170 or 180 round. But yeah, send him into some witch elves. You can juice up the attacks by charging into infantry, and then you don't actually have to attack that unit either. So you can put that into a hero if you like that's near the unit. So yeah, multi-charging. You're killing a couple of units. You're healing wounds back. You're getting extra attacks. Yeah, he's unreal. He's way better than Kragnos. Kragnos is a little bitch.
I don't disagree. I think I called him in a previous stream. He's like Kragnos is like the person around high school saying that he's a super Chad, that no one's actually ever seen the girls or the boys that they were going for in high school, but they were like. I don't think he's killed any dragons. He's no ender of any worlds. He'll die to a Stormdrake guard.
Well,
this has been a good chat
because just quickly on.
No, please.
If we were to fight in a vacuum, right? Karazhai versus what's his name? He'll be Kragnos. Kragnos will be neg 1 to be just to wound. He'll have neg 1 attack. I don't know how he kills dragons, man.
Mate, I think Kragnos, the crab from the IDK warband, is probably better than Kragnos. I would rather Kragnos than Kragnos.
Yeah. That crab is a hidden gem in this game, that's for sure.
Do you think the tail will get FAQ'd, seem broken to allocate all hits out to one unit? I'm going to say no. I don't think it needs to be FAQ'd.
I think the community should show the same same coming togetherness that they did to get the Stormdrake Guard nerfs. But what I think we should do is lobby to GW to reduce the points on Kragnos and Karazhai by 100 points each, bring them down to 500 where they probably should be. The tail is very situational. It'll be good in some matches against 4 Mega Gargants. It's absolutely useless. But it just is what it is. It's not the only thing that's got a rule like that. It's been in the game since AOS 1 in the starter box. Was it the starter box?
Stomper? I think the War Stomper has the same rule. You just calculate.
Yeah, he gets extra, but he does cap at 10. Yeah. But I'm just trying to think of who the Blades of Khorne, Scar Bloodwrath. He has a 3-inch width, which gets extra attacks depending on however many models he's into as well. I think it's neg 1 rend 2 damage, so it's pretty close. You got Decimators used to be able to do that.
By the way, I think we made some poor. I was going to say Beast of Chaos, but the Kragnos is not even Beast of Chaos. We made some destruction players sad, saying that we're coming at Kragnos. Your mate Dalton is talking about Drakes. And look, my issue with Kragnos, and I know if you're joining this stream in your Stormcast, you're like, why on earth are these guys talking about Kragnos? I just want to end it here. He just doesn't synergize very well, and he's stupidly expensive for what he does. Bring him back to 500 and we talk. I think he's just way overcosted. Yeah,
he is. I actually am a big fan of Kragnos, but you just make him cheaper. I think he's unplayable at the moment, unfortunately. Yeah, all jokes aside. Yeah.
No. All right, this is getting into weirdness. People talk about Noblars and Lumineth, and this detoured significantly. Look, long story short, I like this book. This is not a sales pitch. I clearly get nothing. It's actually a really good book. I think it's the first time I personally have been excited about Stormcast. I've been pretty vocal in the past that I dislike Stormcast. I've never liked the aesthetic. I found that their lore has been boring. I have just never been a fan of Stormcast, but for the first time in 7 years, my opinion has changed significantly. And I think this is a really good book. There's a lot of cool options. And I like the fact that I'm not I'm not forced down one particular build. I think there's a lot of variety builds, and there's only going to be more that are going to be explored and identified as tournaments kind of kick off and start, because tournaments really only have started using this in the last month, because it hasn't been FAQ'd for long.
Yeah. So I reckon they're going to be pretty popular moving forward. I reckon it'll be back to the numbers where we were at AOS 1 in events. Yeah. Bring it on. I say, just give me my fucking dragons. That's all I can say. I just want them.
If somebody was listening to this and they're not a Stormcast player and they're wondering how to beat Stormcast, do you have any advice for them if they do become popular in the meta? I think, that's probably a really, maybe an interesting question or maybe it's good for me as a Stormcast player to know what I need to avoid in order to, not lose the good toys or to lose my games. What's the...
Yeah. So like the obvious answer is Mortal Wounds, but we won't touch on that because Mortal Wounds counter everything, right? I feel like if you can debuff Stormcast, you're winning. So Death, Soulblight Gravelords can do that really well. Neg 1 to wound, hit, attack. Just by reducing the damage that they're doing to you means you can sort of attrition with Stormcast a little bit better. Then just sprinkle on some Mortal Wounds and kill stuff when you need to. They don't really rely on hero support too much, so you do actually just want to sort of kill the units, kill the threats, and then it's just a bit of a grind, yeah. That's all I can really sort of say. They're slow, make them slower, debuffs, yeah.
And obviously, there's so many different builds out there, right? You play against a Stormkeep build and you see the Lord Relictor take that model down and, stop the teleport. They're slowly moving up the board. You come up against, there's obviously so many different builds. You see some long strikes take them down, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's just too many options.
Just get familiar with Stormcast. You'll be fine.
Yeah. No, look, they're a good book. I really like it, and I am building a Stormcast army now. And I've been building.
I turned you into a man coach.
Vindictors, not Vindicators. I'm building Vindictors.
No? Okay. We're gonna have to buy you a whole heap of Vindicators in 40k just so you can say that you got both. So you are actually confused, genuinely.
I'm just generally confused. Joel, if people want to watch you more and talk to you, I know you are on social or you're on Twitter. I'll put your handle down below if I haven't already got down there.
Yeah.
Measured Gaming, great podcast. I know there's a new episode coming out in the near future, and you've obviously got battle reports happening all the time. Just don't play it around near the kids or work because it is not suitable for families and kids and partners. And I'm sure the C word might be dropped occasionally. It seems like a thing
more than once. Yeah, definitely more than once. It's a bit of fun, where I live in a country town. I'm pretty sort of bogan trash, I guess you could say. But it's just who we are. We swear a lot. Get used to it.
Is Joel on my Discord? No, I don't know if Joel knows how to use Discord.
Yeah, I'm there. I've got all my Discords muted. I hate the notifications, but I get the @ one. So if you do mention me, then I'll have to chat.
By the way, I was just trying to shit talk you. I know you're in the Discord. I don't know if you are. Yeah. Anyway, you are in there, so we'll get you more active. But Joel, any shout outs? Anything you want to say before we kind of bring this home?
I would shout out my club, but they're all a bunch of C's.
So please don't say that word.
Yeah. You're right. But shout out to you, Coach. You do a great job, mate. So really appreciate you having me on again.
No, it's been a pleasure, and I think I would look. I'm legitimately building a Stormcast army. It's now I'm playing with Daughters of Cain, but it's my 2022 armies on parade. You might see. I won my store armies on parade. So that is done. 2022 is my Stormcast army. Let me know in the comments how I should build my list. Are you a Stormkeep or a Scion player? I'm thinking about building both Krondys and Karazhai. But if
that's the correct answer.
Yeah.
You can't stop at one. You need both.
Yeah, I like it's like the Mega Gargants. I'm like, which Mega Gargant do I want to build? The answer was, let's just buy 3 boxes and just build one of each. And I think that's the answer.
Just get it over and done with, yeah.
But
very good, mate.
yeah. But let me know, peeps, comments. You know what to do, YouTubey stuff. Tell me how I should build my list and what the synergies are. I think I need a chariot. That's probably the one thing I love. I love that stupid chariot.
It's a great looking model for a chariot. It's actually the first chariot that Games Workshop have released since Age of Sigmar, I think. All the other chariots have just been sort of carried over from fantasy.
Yeah. A lot of the chariots used to be rubbish. Like, we all got excited about the Scourge Runner chariots. Like, they were the meta for a while because they were 60 points. This thing is like, you got to look at it. You got to look at it like a Stonehorn. Like, you got to look at that chariot and like, it's not a shitty chariot. It is a Stonehorn, and it is going to punch you in the face when it charges you.
Yep, it's a Stonehorn that's half the price and it got a better save.
Last question: any units that you'd bring into a Cities of Sigmar army? Let's end it there with actually a positive discussion. Is there anything that you'd bring into a Cities army? We talked about Mr. Tooty McToot in like Sylvaneth or Seraphon.
What would I bring? Protectors, probably, just to give yourself a bit more staying power on the front lines. You can't deep strike them. Fulminators and Living City, obviously. That's a no-brainer. That's unreal, that combination. Maybe the Star Drake, like the Lord Celestine Star Drake, also in Living City, just to get the fights first stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I've already told you about Karazhai. I've already told you about Karazhai in Hammerhall. I want to see what Krondys can do in Hallow Heart. I think Wizard Dragon in Wizard City, or even in Settler's Gain. What could Wizard Dragon and Teclis or Lumineth do in Settler's Gain? I think there could be some spice there.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Because I also play cities, right? Like, I've got it's probably my 3rd biggest army collection that I've got cities. Even giving Karazhai or Krondys +3 to move in turn 1 +1 save. I was just thinking that. Yeah, that'd be good. It's always good when shit goes faster and it, has an extra save. I think there's lots of combos and stuff which you could look into. Interesting. I'm going to give that more thought, I think, down the track.
Let's list tech, because I love my cities as well. And also, finally, thank you, Reg, for the kind donation to the show. Much appreciated. Let me know, folks, how you're building your list. I want to go to bed. Joel wants to go have some beers. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back on the channel. It's nice to have your information flex outside of Beasts of Chaos. While I do appreciate your Bok point of view, it's been good to hear how you're thinking about Stormcast. And I'm going to do some other shows out there with some other folks. I want to talk a bit about some of the other sides of the book and how other people are looking at it. But Joel, you are a legend, and let's do the outro. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more 6s.